Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How's it going?
I'm good. Good. I like your little blue light back there.
That is a refrigerator light.
It's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. It's nice. Yeah, it's nice to have a refrigerator in my studio. I use it often. It's nice. I got a refrigerator light over there, and I don't know if you can see over
Oh,
there.
hi,
Got a
puppy.
sleeping
What's your
dog.
doggy's name?
Her name's Gilda,
Oh,
and
cute.
she's elderly, so she just sleeps all day
Yeah,
long. Yeah.
that's so is she named after Gilda Radner?
No, she isn't, though I love Gilda Radner, but I just saw her and she was Gilda. I don't know what to say. She's Gilda. Yeah.
Yeah, we have an old man too. He sleeps all the time as well, but he just like 5 minutes ago before you popped on, he was making all these weird noises in the other room, and I thought, oh my gosh, is he okay? I'm gonna have to hurry and run over there and make sure that, because when they get old, it's
I know.
scary.
Well, if you have a dog that gets old, you're lucky because not every dog gets old. I've gone through this is my second dog. So my first dog like didn't get a chance to get old. So I'm very happy to see her just sleeping. And also she can't hear anything. So I'm in this room making loud music all the time and she just sleeps.
No, that's so true. We lost a dog in 2020 and she was only 9
Yeah.
and it was awful. It's such a different I mean, I guess it's the same as people when they, die at a young age. It's very different than when people get to actually and dogs
Yeah.
get to actually live their lives. Yeah.
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 There may be some drilling sounds because our house is under construction in the
Oh,
studio in my house. Yeah.
no problem. No problem.
Right.
So yeah, you have been busy and the metal
Yeah.
community is so stoked. First of all, thank you for bringing, a wish come true for so many of us. It's so funny when I do a lot of interviews, and depending on who it is, there's a certain group of metalheads on social media that'll be excited about one and other ones that'll be excited about other and whatever, depending on what the band is. But you like brought the whole metal community together with this, and I thought how cool to see so many people so excited about this, because as we know, the metal community kind of is pretty good at tearing each other down anymore. And so you're like bringing a whole mass together, and I think that's so important.
That's nice to hear. I mean, the fact that anybody knows about anything, any project that I have anything to do with is always a bonus. You never know. I mean, this is such a strange field of work that to have anyone that's anticipating anything is just the ultimate luxury. I don't know what else you could ask for, but no one's seen anything yet, and also they've been deprived of it for a decade. So they're like, what's going on? So about 3 years ago, about 2019 actually, so about 4 years ago, this whole thing kind of started. We did a big show where I got a phone call out of the blue, and the voice on the other side said, "Hey, it's from Adult Swim, and we want to know if you want to headline this festival, this Adult Swim festival in 2019. It's gonna be like 20,000 people there." And I said, "Well, let me see if Gene Hoglan's available. If Gene Hoglan's available, then I am definitely interested. But if he's not available, then we could be screwed
Can't do
because
it.
Gene, to me, it's like, this live show, and Gene has kind of taken over and rightly so for all the right reasons. And I'm lucky to have such a great collaborator and Gene on the drumming on records and drumming live. He's such a perfectionist powerhouse, easy to work with guy who's got a really good taste in music, really good taste in speaking about music. He and I he's got a good bedside manner. He's really good to work with. So Gene was available, and then I had to kind of fill out the rest of the parts because Mike Keneally and Brian Beller, who I usually play with, weren't available. So I found Neely Brosh. I mean, I didn't find her. I knew her. I knew she was a great guitar player um because I saw her play. I listened to her, and she's just a monster player. And then Pete Griffin, who we've played with, on I think in like 2013 when we did Death Album 3 tour, he swapped off with Brian Beller. Anyway, So that was kind of like I think we knew that we had to kind of up our ante and just really deliver a show that can get like people that just make something very simply like, look, see this spectacle, see that audience. There's an audience there. Let's get to work. Let's figure this out. So basically, that goes over well. And then in like early 2020, like, as the pandemic is hitting everyone, I get this kind of offer. They said, how would you like to make a feature, a Dethklok feature? And I, by the way, TV is something I've always done just because it kind of found myself in TV. All I care about are movies. So I thought, if we can go out with a movie on this thing, then I'm very excited. That's very interesting to me because I think it's a really good challenge. I think it's gonna be a tricky challenge because I got a lot of kind of loose ends to tie. I have a lot of things that are owed to this series, and I have a kind of an ideology, a style that I'd like to see this worked out in, and I also just want to kind of raise the bar in every aspect. So that's how this whole thing started, and so that was when I started developing my old notes, because I was planning on, I had an ending in mind for a long time, kind of, during the inception of this. I kind of had this vague thing that got clearer and clearer, and by the time we did this thing called the Doomstar Requiem, we I definitely knew what it was, but I even knew what it was before. So I cleaned up my notes, and then we started getting to work, and that meant a lot of different things. I meant starting to prepare Death Album 4. I meant getting a score album together, the Army of the Doomstar soundtrack, which was one of the more exciting things as well, just to really do a proper film score, and then get the writing started with the movie, and then get basically cast who was going to be working with me in animation, in compositing, in the voice acting world, etc. So that's kind of how the whole thing got started. And so it's probably about 4 years ago that we started talking. So it seems like 4 years ago was 6 years after the last thing. So that didn't seem as long, but now it's 4 years have gone by since then, and it's a sizable project. So
Yeah.
it took a lot of prep, get it all, just so it can all come out and we can start going on tour all in the same week. So a movie, two albums, and a tour all happening at the same time. So yeah, it is busy. To answer your question, yes, it's a busy time.
Yes. Yeah, because the end of this month, right, is when you're going out with Baby Metal.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I haven't seen them, but they seem like they'd be a lot of fun to see.
Well, yeah. I'll tell you. This is the question everyone's asked me so far. Is why baby metal? And they were pitched to me early on, and I know who they are, and I've seen the videos, and I've heard them, and I know that they're incredibly popular. They really are. And I thought, well, what we do live and what they do live are different, but they're both high production value shows, and
Yeah.
they're both built to be intensely entertaining in a way that some metal shows aren't. And I'm from the look. I grew up loving like big production, music production, like even musicals, like Andrew Lloyd Webber and all that stuff. Like even
Yeah.
like Jesus Christ Superstar and Evita. I grew up with those soundtracks in my
Mhm.
house. There's a reason I'm interested in music and storytelling, because and then like The Who, Tommy was a movie that I just watched all the time on cable. Anytime there's like a dance movie or a musical or anything, I am really, really interested in it. And I just really, really am.
Yeah.
And movies with great scores, I'm also interested in, because I think the score is also a really, really strong storytelling device.
Hmm.
It's so important, a great score. So all that stuff is interesting to me. And and yeah, so I don't even remember how we got to that topic, but these are all facts. I'm interested in.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
it's cool to hear. It's cool to hear how it all has come back together. And unfortunately, so I was supposed to get the stream for the movie the last couple days, but they weren't able to get it out in time. So I haven't seen it yet, which is such a bummer. I went back and started revisiting the old show, and I got lost all in it all over again. I was like, oh my gosh, this is just so brilliant. So I'm really excited to see the new movie. And I've I've heard the album, the
Yeah.
four, and I've listened to that quite a few times. I really like Dead Face. I think that one's a super sonically like different, type of
You know
song.
that song is really it's a very different song because there's a moment in the movie where one of the characters is like knocked out, like he can't speak or hear or see, but he can only play his guitar. And there's a tuner on his guitar, and it's spelling out, and he's trying to give this message, and so he's spelling out notes, DEADFACE, and those are the notes of that song. So when you hear those plucked
That's
notes
so
at the very
great.
beginning, and so for that reason, I've never really written a song with like trying to spell something out and trying to make it into music. So
Yeah.
I thought I thought that's really, and it turns out it sounds really cool. And then I kind of gave myself permission to mutate it as the song goes on, and then I just stepped away and the song took over. And so yeah, it's really, so what you're hearing. So Death Album 4 is way more aggressive and
Hmm.
more intense than I think other records. And it really, and that's part of this project. This project is a little bit more intense, a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more dire, a little bit more mystical than anything else you've seen. So you hear, so those, the record is even kind of in two halves. One of them is aggression, one of them is kind of like a little bit more expansion, expansiveness, mystical. So that's what it is. So that's how it's divided up. And just like, again, kind of like punching through a wall and saying, here we are again.
Hmm.
And then going into this kind of crazy mystical dreamland, with Horse of Fire, with Dead Face, with Mermaider 3.
Yeah, that was the other one I was gonna bring up. Yeah.
Yeah, which is like to me the Viking funeral of the entire kind of everything, just here's the big final kind of musical thing that kind of goes into this kind of subterranean underwater lore that's part of the show. It's just part of the show. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. From, I mean, what, second episode? I think it was.
Well, that's what it is. I mean, so this whole project all kind of relates back to where we started with the show. And where we started with the show was um Jean-Pierre, the Dethklok chef, who's the world's only 6-star chef, is praying. He's got this prayer that he's repeating. I'm a gear in the wheel of the clock. And we're and it's our job to kind of build this world and make this band seem like almost like, one of bigger than the Beatles, bigger than anything
Mhm.
else that's ever existed, the seventh largest economy, and really build a world out. And the music is part of the world building. Dethklok records have all been like, what is this song about? You hear these strange songs that are kind of like just going all it's part of just building out this world, making it feel much bigger than it is because it's a cheap cartoon that's on cable, but how big can we make it feel, so that's what we're always asking. How cool can we make it? How big can we make it feel? Jokes, character, all that stuff, and equally as important. But world building with this group of people that I've been doing world building with at Titmouse and all the other collaborators of the show, because it is a huge collaboration. It's not
Mhm.
just me. It's a ton of people who really accept the challenge. So yeah, so it all kind of relates back. So again, I think like kind of in this cloud of like song ideas versus narrative ideas versus little just world building pieces like Mermaider 3 and all that stuff, but it all goes back to episode 1 and then episode 2 where they go underwater. And
Mhm.
those are the two kind of things that I just always think, okay, these are my thesis statements, because they're almost like two different pilots. They function very differently.
Mhm.
And the show kind of is also like, okay, now that we're up and running, credits. And that's what we wanted to leave you with. We're about to get started and we just end the show. And that's kind of an idea that we hadn't really seen. Like, how can we get you all ramped up and just leave you on the peak every single episode?
Yeah.
And hopefully, again, our job is, it's almost like we're on a date with the audience. Like, can we make you think about us before our next date? you know so so that's what it is, because a TV show and an audience is some kind of a relationship. It's a friendship, even, because people need friends and they don't all have them. Everyone's online, and sometimes people don't even leave or make friends or anything. So there is something about learning who these characters are, making them definable and behave similarly. And there's something that happens in our brain when we watch TV where we go, they're my friends. Oh,
Mhm.
okay, he's Murderface is going to lambast him again, and something's going to happen. So those are all the things. Again, this is all strange because we've never talked about how we did the show before. Because
Oh
in,
wow.
in my head, well, on the DVDs or anything, we never did commentaries. We never spoke about
Mhm.
the etymology of Dethklok and the band itself. we showed it. We show it all. We don't talk
Mhm.
about it. But now that it's finished, I am blabbing about how we did everything. So
Oh, well, I mean, it's cool information to know. It's always neat to know like the create of how things that we love are created. So how was it after 10 years revisiting these characters? Was it like, did it take some time to kind of get back into the groove of things, or was it just like
yeah,
reuniting with old friends?
it's they're always kind of in my head. Everyone, Full Metal Jackie. She's so it's really strange. For a very long time, I'm always working on something else. I'm a writer and I'm a musician, but I usually am working in some kind of capacity to either write something and stuff. Sometimes it never sees the light of day, but like production deals and stuff like that. So that's what I'm usually working on. But Jackie every once in a while says, "Hey, do you mind doing this kind of brutal pick of the week thing where she'll ask me to do Dethklok's voices and she'll give me like 1,000 songs and 1,000 like brutal pick of the week. It's going to be Pantera, Cowboys, whatever, but I'll do it as those characters. So I'll do long improvisation things like every couple years or every year or so. And so it just keeps those characters kind of in my head.
Mhm.
But still, what we're doing with this one is it's not as flippant as the TV show. We're trying to land the whole bird here.
Right.
And so it's a little bit different. So we can't just go back and do the things we've done because we already did them, A, and B, this is not that project. This project is the big epic. I mean, if you've seen the trailer, you see that it's kind of a little bit more it's a little bit more cinematic than
Yeah.
anything we've done. And we're always trying to, with our budget and our timeline and our schedule, we're always trying to push the envelope. But this is like the final dare, the final
Mhm.
gauntlet throwdown for the whole production team. How do we make this cooler, better, more exciting? How do we just make sure that the story is always moving, always moving? The characters at the center of this story are really clear and clean. So so yeah, all that stuff is kind of part of what we think about. And yeah, oh yeah. So your question is, I think it was like when I first got back in the studio with Tommy, who plays Murderface and Toki. It was kind of like that first scene in Alien where everyone's waking up out of the cryogenic kind of like pods, and they're all kind of like feeling like nauseous and hang on the side of their bed and rubbing their temples and kind of reacclimating. Like, is there gravity? I'm in outer space. What's going on here? And that's kind of what it felt like. And then also add like a really solid narrative. So even though there was improv, we were still just making sure we were sticking to this kind of behemoth narrative that was really complicated, really, really tricky. And again, like a challenge that I was really interested in trying to make work. So yeah, it was tricky. But even going back to Mark Hamill and Victor Brandt, who has a really
Wow.
important, cool role in this movie, and Malcolm McDowell, they all kind of
Cool.
they, and then I got to, talk because Mark Hamill's characters in this movie, I wanted to make sure and kind of elevate them just a little bit more than they've been because there's this cat and mouse game going on with the tribunal. Again, the very first episode is establishing a relationship between this kind of governmental tribunal and Dethklok. And
Mhm.
by the way, the reason we came to that conclusion early on was because of a documentary that was out at the time called The People versus John Lennon. And it was kind of about the same thing where John Lennon was such a cultural force that FBI, CIA, etc., kept tabs on him because he could probably sway an election. Vietnam was happening at the time, and he was anti-war, and people were listening to him, and Nixon and everybody were like, "What's going on here?" So that to me was like, oh, that's important. That's a good piece of information, and we kind of folded that into the world. And so we had this kind of, and then there's a movie by John Frankenheimer. Uh, what is it called? It was called. I always forget this one. I'm gonna look it up just because it's a one word thing. Seconds is what it's called. John Frankenheimer
Mhm.
Seconds. It's this old black and white movie about an identity change, and it's really eerie and it's really interesting and it's kind of macabre and noir at the same time. And we wanted to kind of ape this 1968 movie or something. So again, we're going into like deep, far back stuff to kind of get influence, which I always like to do because if you kind of take from right now, it'll feel a little could feel a little generic or a little kind of
Mhm.
too well known. So the more we go deeper into our kind of reference buckets, then we can build something that feels a little bit more personalized. So all those things are kind of going in the place. But uh I'm going all over the map, by the way.
Oh, it's good.
But Mark Hamill is part of he plays two characters, one Senator Stampingston and one Salacia. And we wanted to kind of elevate the Salacia character just a little bit more and give him a little bit more context.
Yeah. So were
Yeah.
they super, I mean, a lot of those are, like you said, repeating voice actors. Were a lot of them like right on board, like, yep, let's do this, didn't even hesitate to go and revisit those characters as well for them?
It's funny. Yeah, actually, it was really nice to hear that this gang was back, that they were on board. And Mark Hamill in particular. It's funny because the last time I saw him, I mean, I keep in touch with him. He's the coolest guy in the world, and I keep in touch with him. But and if I send him an email, he'll always write me back. He's really cool, but I don't wear out my welcome. I don't want to bother him.
You don't want to
But
bother
when
Luke
we were working
Skywalker.
together, yeah, I know. But when we were working together, I would see him like once a week, so we kind of established a little bit of a rapport and everything. And and again, he's a cool guy. And he wasn't Luke Skywalker during that time, and then he
Hmm.
became Luke Skywalker again. He was Luke
Yeah.
Skywalker. He wasn't, and he did all this other cool stuff, and then he was Luke Skywalker again. So the last time I saw him for the Doomstar Requiem rock opera, which by the way, I said something on Twitter yesterday. I do think people should check it out if they haven't seen it, because story wise, it'll make your, I mean, you'll be able to understand what's going on in this movie, but it just may make your context. I think it's kind of important to check it out, because you'll watch this movie and go, I'm gonna want to go check that out afterwards, because I know they all link up, and it really
Right.
does. They link up. They're like, that movie ends right where this movie starts. You
Cool.
know. So the last time I saw him, he was growing out his beard for Luke Skywalker and getting into, like, that table read picture with him and Adam Driver and all that stuff had gotten out. So I was talking to him, and he had some kind of drink that he was supposed to be drinking, and like, and like getting in shape for Luke Skywalker and all that stuff. So that was the last time I saw him, when we did the Doomstar Requiem. And so yeah, so for him to come back and do this after all that monumental stuff is just like I'm so grateful
Yeah.
that he did it. I'm so grateful that Malcolm McDowell, who I think is just legendary,
Absolutely.
amazing actor, so much presence on screen. And then Victor Brent too. Victor Brent is kind of the unsung hero, where he is one of the great voiceover actors, and he's like, and I mean, he was on the original Star Trek. He was just a cool guy with great stories, and I logged a lot of hours with him over the years. So all these people, I'd sit in the booth. I'd be on this side of the booth just talking to him from a microphone, then be on the other side. So we'd sit there and joke around and kind of like develop rapport. But anyway, that's all the cool stuff that, bringing them back was great. And again, I'm lucky that they did. I'm super
Yeah.
lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, legendary people. So as a voice actor, you're doing, well, three of the main voices. How is it doing the shift? I'm always curious about, because they're so dynamically different vocals
Yeah, it's
or
well, you
voices.
know what? There in Los Angeles, there was I know he's still doing stand-up and comedy and stuff, but a guy named Phil Hendry made me kind of realize, oh, you can really shift your voice into two different pitches very quickly,
Mhm.
and have a conversation between two people. He would do radio shows where he would play a bunch of different characters that would call in, and he'd be talking to them on this side, and also kind of like cutting himself off with a character that's calling. And I thought that's just amazing piece of virtuosity, and it seems like it's really hard until you try it. And then I tried it, and also what I needed to do was to make sure I had three distinctive kind of tonalities: one a low guttural, which is Nathan;
Mhm.
one kind of higher and more nasally, which is Pickles; and then one kind of lower and cleaner kind of baritone, which is Squiscar. So going into those ranges kind of does all those works. If I'm speaking lower, or I'm speaking higher, more nasally, or whatever, it's really easy for me to kind of like to do it. And plus, that's kind of the trick, is to build characters. And this is what I learned from doing the first show I did, home movies, is to build characters that have enough kind of nuance in their dynamics, in the rhythm of how they speak, and just in their character makeup, so that you can improvise in their voices and surprise yourself by just letting the character take over. And just, I kind of go dark, and Pickles will take over, or Squiscar will take over, and I don't know what they're going to say next, and I kind of come out of my little trance, and we listen to the audio, and some of it works and some of it doesn't. And but that's the trick. Yeah, but normally I'm trying to do it all like on one track, and try to keep the spontaneity together. Even though I wrote it and I know what the character is going to say,
Yeah.
how can I make it feel new and spontaneous, is always like the trick of voiceover animation. So So I don't think it's too difficult if you can really give yourself different registers to kind of
Yeah,
work in. Like if a higher falsetto and a lower voice, they would sound like they were talking to each other. So that was the trick. And again, just being able to improvise in their voice. If you can do that, I think you can it just kind of like it all comes back.
that's so cool. Out of the five characters, which one do you feel like either you enjoy voicing the most, you enjoy the personality the most, or that you just do you have one out of the five that you just like over the others for whatever reason?
Um, I really don't. I don't have like a preference really because uh
They're all so unique. They all have such different
yeah, but they're
personalities.
also like they're in my mind, my relationship with these characters in this world is very different than the audience because I'm irritated with them. I'm irritated with their existence. To me, they're like five just dipshit assholes living inside of my head who are wrong and say the worst thing all the time. And now it's my job to kind of come up with the worst thing I can constantly like seriously, like being in production in Metalocalypse and I'd go have a conversation with somebody afterwards and I would just be saying the worst possible things and making jokes. And they're like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, right, I'm in Dethklok world. My head's in Dethklok world. How are you doing today? I see you have a baby with you, whatever. Like, so it's character. Like you get in so deep in character that you just start thinking, and that's so for me, it's all irritating because these guys are negative, they're wrong, they're egomaniacs, and but they're idiots. And that's kind of what I think I really need to make comedy is a true dipshit at the center, a numbnuts idiot who's wrong. And then I can and then it's my job to like throw them in the air and throw them through a ceiling fan and spin them around and hurt them and throw them into like broken glass and shoot them out of a tree. And that's kind of what my job is to punish them for existing. And that's like 60 something episodes. And then we go into this final thing where will they change or won't they? Will they, because this is a story about celebrities. This is a story about celebrities who this world kind of sees as messiahs in some way. And will their arc complete itself or won't it? And that's why I really felt like I needed to do this, because that's the whole reason of making a show, is getting that final turn to happen.
Yeah.
I don't love all TV, but there's some TV that I think is greater than anything, like the original British Office.
Hmm.
12 episodes and a special, I think, is that's it. It's just 12 episodes, 12 half-hour episodes and 1 hour long special. And at the very last episode of that show, Ricky Gervais's character has to change. And if he does, and when he does, it makes the whole journey worthwhile.
Yeah.
Without the last episode, we're just watching a stupid dildo be a jerk, and just be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's my relationship with the show. So that's why I don't have a favorite. I detest them all equally. Um,
Sweet
it's true.
moments
It's true.
though. They have some sweet moments.
No, they what? Well, that's the thing is as the show continues. Well, that's kind of like that's also how we plotted out the show. Is the first two is world building, heavy metal world, and all that stuff. Third season is getting into the characters a lot more, getting into
Yeah.
them, making them a little bit more vulnerable. Fourth season is we start kind of like telling the final story. We start really putting pieces together to get to the final thing, and then we do this rock opera, and here we are with this movie. So, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I think there's capacity for these brothers who are all stuck together, in a tour bus to be a family. And that's the question. Can they get over their stupid egos, their myopic dipshittery, and become, and grow into big boys from the
Yeah.
Lost Boys to like grown-ups. So that's what this movie is. Also, that's part of the reason to really come back and to really like take on this challenge and get all the music set up and all this stuff. Like just the brutality of the record is just like
Yeah.
it's not in the movie. So the movie's got heavy metal and it's got cool stuff, but I really didn't think it had enough. So the record had to be more brutal. And then the soundtrack album, I think, really goes into the like a little bit more beautiful. in
Mhm.
music, in the score and everything. It gets a little bit more pretty and beautiful, and it gets into the subtext of the character's feelings, which is sometimes dire and sometimes gorgeous.
Mhm.
So I think this whole project, this whole trifecta of movie, soundtrack, and Death Album 4 is what makes one complete piece, not just one of them, not just the movie, not just the record, not just the. So I think it all kind of, each one of them gives something the other doesn't. So when you listen to the soundtrack, you'll see that it's like another movie within a movie.
Mm, I'm excited.
So
I'm excited to hear it and see it. You keep saying final, so and you're like definitely saying things that sound like this could be the end. If this does as well as it looks like it's going to, are you going to be able to keep that the end, or is there a possibility of more? Or do you know now? I mean, I know this
um
is still brand
look,
new.
there's always a possibility, but let me just say this. This thing that is coming out is the end of the story of that first episode. Could there be another full story of another thing after that? Potentially. Could there be just a fun comedy odyssey that I could go on? Potentially. But this is the end of episode 1 that came out in 2006. So that's what I really wanted to do, is get there. I mean, is it possible that there's a future beyond this? I mean, if it, like, again, if people want it, and there's someone, again, what you're trying to find in your life, in your creative life, is some kind of gorgeous cross section between art and commerce, where you can give an audience something and also selfishly be artistic.
Of course,
and
yeah.
and that's what, and it doesn't always happen. There's not always someone that will front X amount of dollars for this thing. So this isn't like making a record, which is a lot cheaper to make. A movie is like, I mean, when I look at the payroll, when I look at the bottom line of the budget, like the production budget, and how much we have from week to week, and how we have to get intelligent about how to spend this money, what to do when in the process, and all that stuff. It's really complicated, tricky, and you need some big chunk of money to do it. So I knew that I would have this thing to do it, and I needed to kind of like make sure that this story got told and didn't leave any more meat on the bone. So, so is there a future? There isn't a deal for one, but it's possible if someone gives me a great deal of money.
If someone makes it worth my while, yeah. I mean, of course, it has
No,
to
no,
make
it doesn't have
sense.
to pay me. They have to like pay for the whole thing, because seriously, like when you add up, like, why does a movie cost so much to make? What is an animation movie? And by the way, our movie is technically a low budget movie, but we did our absolute best to make it look like it was 5 times more expensive than it was. Just
Well,
through like, what's that?
it looks like the animation is a little bit more
It's elevated. It's,
yes.
yeah, it is. Everything's much more. So you're gonna see angles of the characters that you've never seen before. Like, we're gonna see just, again, I love movies. I love cool shots. I love gorgeous cinema. I love good cinematography. And so what we were trying to do is ape some of my favorite directors and directors of photography's work. So those are the conversations we had. How can we make this more cinematic? How can we get new angles of our characters that we've never seen before? Because normally in the TV show, it's the reason you can make a TV show is because you can kind of use the same characters over and over again at same eye level, and it's not that dynamic. When I say dynamic, I mean like putting a camera on the ground and shooting up, putting a camera up and shooting down to the side, getting these cool angles. And so we really, really wanted to do that, and really just say, here's a great place where we really need some major animation power that we've never seen on this show before, and here's another place, and here's another place, and we just want you to have full of kind of gorgeous spectacle throughout the movie. And I always think, can you watch the movie with the sound off and get something out of it? Can you just turn the sound off and listen? Can you turn the visual off and listen to all the sound and
Mhm.
get something out of it? And you put them all together and you go, okay, now we got something powerful, hopefully. But again, the audience will decide for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's the idea. So we really got into crazy challenges that we've never gotten into before. We got into a lot of practical effects with making this thing, in that we would do like we filled these aquariums filled with ink, colored ink, where can it's like what Flash Gordon did for the backgrounds in the skies. It's what like Poltergeist. It's like an old practical effects trick to build skies. So we did a lot of that. So we let me show you. Like if you like for example, oh yeah, so this is like just one little shot of what these aquariums can do. It's this is me just kind of taking a picture of a screen. This is just ink
Oh,
inside of a
that's
an aquarium, and we light it
oh, that's
really
crazy.
interestingly, and we just say that's our background, you know. Things like this
Oh my
crazy thing is just like something that
gosh.
happens through different colored
That's
ink and gold
nuts.
and stuff, and these kinds of things. So this is like, but this is a trick they used in that whole ILM team was doing, and you'll see it in Raiders of the Lost Ark. You'll see it in old early 80s movies. Poltergeist, one of my favorite movies of all time. You'll see it in Ghostbusters, like they have crazy cloudy skies and stuff. So to me,
Yeah.
those practical effects where something is actually taking up volume on screen and it's tactile and you can feel it's not CGI, it's not computer generated or anything. It actually is kind of functioning exactly like how clouds function in the sky. And there's
Yeah.
nothing more gorgeous to me than a gorgeous sky.
Hmm.
So we wanted to make ours a little bit more fantastic, just like in the movie Flash Gordon too. So with the Queen soundtrack, again, just like I saw that in the theater when I was a kid. So I was like, oh my God, that's been stuck in my head forever. It just got right into my pineal gland and it won't release its grasp, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's cool that you were
So yeah,
able to play with that then and do that.
yeah, I'd experimented with it on some other like stuff before that. So like in the interim of also the other thing is like from finishing the Doomstar Requiem until now, I have like just built up a bag of tricks, visual tricks, storytelling tricks and stuff that I hadn't really got to play with. I've gotten to play with them in like music videos or experiments and pilots and stuff like that, but we really got to like kind of put a lot of new technique into this thing. And so it feels different. And I want it to feel different. I want it to feel like a big, gorgeous, fucked up heaven and hell dream, you know? So so for us, by the way, this is how I have fun. Having a lot of jobs to do, I get bored very easily, and I can control music very easily from this room. And this is the room
Hmm.
that I sit and I work on my guitars and vocals and the dialogue for the movie. And I'm even editing little bits and pieces like through Pro Tools, recutting scenes and handing them back to the editor and saying something along these lines. And you go do it now. But I have my MIDI keyboard controller here, and I have all kinds of really cool sounds here. So that's the challenge. It's really fun, but the real fun is just making it with this group who is also just as excited as I am to try to make something look new and cool and to take something that's kind of old and bring it back to life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So do you remember when in life was the like pivotal moment that you decided that metal was going to be a big part of your life, a big part of your world?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been playing guitar since I was 14. And the way that I got into guitar is that my friend down the street, who I like rode the bus with in junior high, he was like a guy that was wearing like like acid wash jackets, and he had like a mullet, and he was like had Metallica on his his notebook and everything.
Martyred.
Yeah, and I had at that point, a year or two before, I'd saved all my money. I'd mowed lawns. I'd saved my money, and I bought a really crappy electric guitar from like Toys R Us. Seriously, a Toys R Us guitar with a
Oh my
speaker built in.
gosh. Yeah.
I dreamt about it, like in Wayne's World, and I was like, oh, I gotta buy this. It's $84. Where am I gonna find this money? And I bought that, and it just sat, and I was like, well, it doesn't play itself, and it's obviously impossible. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with this thing. But my buddy on the bus, his name is Renzo. We're still good friends, and we went to music school together, and we've been friends ever since. But he was the one that said, I'm going to show you how to play that guitar because I can play guitar. I'm like, no, you can't. Nobody can play guitar. It's impossible. He's like, no, no, no. I'm going to show you. Come to my house after school. So one day I go to his house after school, and he doesn't just show me how to play a couple chords. He also shows me who Metallica is, who Slayer is, who Black Sabbath is, who Iron Maiden is, who Anthrax is, who SOD is, who like Fate's Warning and King Diamond and all this stuff. So that's when, like, that it was like one day, one afternoon, where this guy, and my brain was just a sponge, and I was just like, okay, bring it on. Let me have it all. And he showed me everything, and my life would not be the same, because before that I was listening to Def Leppard and Guns N' Roses, which is, I still love Def Leppard and I still love Guns N' Roses more than anything. But it just took me into this path of darkness, which I like. I mean, when I was 7 years old, I'd stay up and watch horror and terrifying movies like, The Exorcist and stuff like that, and I'd be like, whoa. So I was always interested in the dark side of things,
Mhm.
and I was always interested in metal. And yeah, so that's when it all started.
Mhm.
And then I went to music school, and then I kind of had a guitar identity crisis where, like, am I a jazz fusion guitar player? Am I a country guitar player? Am I a classical writer? What am I? And then I got back in, then I got into comedy. And then I started doing stand up, and I was like, I don't even know if I want this guitar anymore. But something happened, and I started falling back in love with my guitar. It was because music was getting heavier again, like in
Mhm.
the late 90s, 2000s, where I was like, okay, production was getting better.
Mhm.
People were tuning low. And I was like, and I just kind of started following, my brain just dragged my body to Cannibal Corpse shows and all kinds of stuff. And I was just going out there, and I was just like, yep, this is the coolest stuff. Because there's also an era, and like after 2001, after 9/11, you'd think that there'd be all, and after, like, we went to war and weapons of mass destruction, you'd think that there would be like protests, or there'd be something, or like, but no one, like, the Dixie Chicks are the only ones that, like, kind of spoke out against stuff. And you thought that there'd be like music and protest like the 60s or something like that, but it didn't happen. The Dixie Chicks tried, and they got swatted down, and they got, like,
Slaughtered.
they got their lights taken away from them, and they
Mhm.
could no longer make money. And everyone's like, oh, I don't know. And then you had Green Day with American Idiot, and no one else is doing stuff, but you had metal also going, something bad's going on, something crazy is going on. And metal to me was more representative of the era of the early 2000s than anything else. So there it is, and Metallica's back, and Some Kind of Monsters out, and then on TV is like rehab shows and celebrities, like just celebrity reality shows, and Where Are They Now? And then it's basically, I'm just regurgitating what I'm seeing on TV, and that ends up being Dethklok porn. And because everyone's like starting to dress like porn. The internet's young enough where porn is just a part of every single person's life, and they start dressing like porn actors, and it just takes over, and everything kind of takes over. And then I'm like, Metalocalypse right there. That's all that stuff is Metalocalypse. It's that era,
Mhm.
and that kind of like this kind of like post 9/11 world, where like, which way is it up again, and nobody
Yeah.
really knows. So I don't, in context, it's a very kind of like, to me from far away it now seems clear, but at the time I was like, I don't know what this is. I'm just regurgitating through this warped funhouse mirror what I'm seeing on TV, and that's kind of
Right.
what Metalocalypse is.
Huh. That's so interesting. I mean, yeah, it makes total sense now that you're saying it, but I wouldn't have pictured it that way either. And that
Yeah, it's definitely satirizing what's going on. We're also like, I mean, we're also like getting really dark with it. We're like pushing ourselves and daring each other to see how dark we can get with it. Because that's also kind of what happened in the era, is you could get really dark with stuff, and really just like push the envelope too. Where I don't think people do that now anymore.
right.
And I mean, it's a different era.
For sure. So did that in a way kind of help you balance all of that like garbage that was going on in the real world, being able to come out with this theatrical and musical medium? Did it help kind of like internally help you balance those feelings and those thoughts? Like kind of
I
a
don't think
therapeutic
no.
outlet?
I mean,
No?
I don't know if I know. I mean, look, anytime I have the ability to do any kind of art, that art is always therapy. So
Mhm.
no matter what it is, if I'm writing an episode, if I'm writing music, if I'm acting, whatever it is, something in that is somewhat therapeutic. Um, just like I think every pet that everyone has is an emotional support pet. It isn't just those ones with the vests. Everybody's pet is there to support your emotional state in some way.
Sure.
But I also think, yeah, I think all this stuff is like art is therapy, and this is a show about artists. This is a show about a creative family. they're
Hmm.
dipshits, they're mean to each other, and it's also about masculinity in many ways too, about how men talk to each other, especially in, in my generation. Everyone spoke to each other like football coaches. People are rude, they're insensitive, and you have to, like, you have to measure your emotions all the time. And that's kind of what it was like always growing up, and not being too sensitive and not being any of that stuff. So we put that through all these characters. Toki through Squiscar being tough all the time and being like, and Nathan's tough, but he's a romantic inside. He's always been trying to find the right girl, all that stuff, so we try to measure emotions through these kind of stoic death metal characters, and you'll see in the movie that's it's more of that to come, but yeah, that's part of what was happening. Whether or not I could put a name to it at the time, when I got back into this project, everything that I just told you about the era, like early 2000s, masculinity, everything else, that was what Metalocalypse was. And I didn't know it. I was just regurgitating what I was seeing, which is sometimes like just kind of telling the truth about like the state of the world and the state of what
Yeah.
the world is, what we're deciding to show people, and how to entertain people and how to warp their minds and all that stuff. And our show seems like the worst version of it, but all we're doing is showing stuff that's already there.
I don't know. We got It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia out now too, and they do a pretty good job of the same type of thing.
Oh yeah, no, that's like misanthropic, it really is. It's just like it's so dark and selfish and subterranean and evil. And I yeah, I mean, they're so funny too.
So funny. That's one of my
Yeah,
favorite shows.
yeah.
So something I ask everybody because I think it's a really important question. What are some things that you do for self-care, especially with you having so many things going on and always trying to stay busy because your mind is obviously going a million miles an hour? What are some things you do to kind of take care of yourself?
Well, this is what I've been saying about this process, and it's crazy. It's a really tense process because uh, a movie or a TV show or a record, they're all, I consider them ticking time bombs, and you got to solve or decode it before they explode. And the explosion is usually like when you're out of money and you have to hand it in, and you want to make sure you've solved the puzzle before then. So every night I'm dreaming about it. I'm sleeping about it. I'm waking up. I'm taking notes on my phone every day because I don't want to squander a second, because I want to get this thing right in a way that where I am happy with it.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to do. I mean, there's a lot of selfishness, I think, in art, rightly so. But again, finding that cross section between the artist and the audience is the ultimate goal. So it's a terrifying place to be.
Mhm.
And the way I've described it is this, where like it's almost like your parents caught you smoking and they make you smoke the whole pack. And in this case, I'm smoking the whole pack of guitars, of voiceover, of songwriting, of score writing, of directing, of acting, of producing, of blah, 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 the whole thing. So I smoke the whole pack of everything. And at the end, what happens? You're sick, but you're also addicted. So you just want to do it again and again and again and again, and a bigger challenge and a bigger hill. So that's where I'm at. So that to me is exciting. But and I can't complain about any of that stuff, because being in that seat and having that much creative kind of power or control or just decision making power, whatever it is that landed me here in this particular seat, I couldn't be more happy, because that's more, the process of making is the most fun I can possibly have, while it's also terrifying, treacherous, all that stuff. To measure your emotions, to kind of like make sure that, like, okay, is this a big deal? Is getting angry going to help anything? No, absolutely not. Let's talk. Let's get, okay, department heads, let's all talk. How do we outsmart this? How do we do this? Come on, I want to hear ideas. Come on, who's got something? Oh, someone's going to screen share. Okay, show me something. So that's how we would talk all the time. Like, it's going to be hard. It's going to be treacherous. We know it. And this is something else I learned about misery, is that misery only matters if you're inside of the misery. The second you breach the threshold into non-misery, you forget it. You forget that it ever
Mhm.
even happened.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
if you're on the other side of misery, then it almost didn't happen. You forgot that it happened. And I was
Right.
talking to there's something that happens at the end of every project where you're sitting there, I'm sitting there and I'm screen sharing with the compositor, Brian Weeder, who is just a really important part of this movie, and someone who I met along the way, like in the interim between, and I did a lot of projects with him. He's really sharp guy and makes really cool stuff. But at the very end, he's got all the pressure to like export these shots. Your computer's going down, things are freezing. A render didn't work, or it's a 20-hour render and we missed a step or something, and it all goes onto his table. And I remind him, I go, "You're miserable, but you're so close to There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm telling you, here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna finish this thing. You're gonna be really proud of your work, and then you're going to say, when do we do it again?" And that's the crazy repetitive thing. Beyond that, I mean, it's really funny. My relationship with the guitar is, it's also therapy. I have two kind of
Mhm.
versions where there's like, I have to work with my guitar and make this thing happen, or I got to play the part right, whatever it is. And that's kind of where I'm like, hey guitar, I don't like you and you don't like me, but together we got to work this thing out. And then there are times where I sit with my guitar and I play what I want to play, and and it's not Dethklok. It's like anything. It's melody. It's like it's crazy chords and it's crazy fusiony, nerdy stuff. That's like a long 30 something year relationship with my guitar that I keep trying to advance. And I've had this really long relationship with music in my head and all that stuff. And that to me is therapeutic. So
Yeah.
divorcing my guitar, or dividing into two halves, which is the work half and the kind of the helpful spiritual, the kind of make myself feel good help half, where I get to kind of become a better guitar player. That's something that I do. And then seriously, I was like I would usually blow off steam by riding a bike or exercising and stuff, but I got so busy I couldn't do any of that stuff. Plus, bike riding was hurting my wrists and making
Mm.
lean over a bike and you kind of put pressure on your wrist, even if you don't
Uh,
want to, you do. So it's like the worst thing you can do if you're a guitar player. So I had to like stop doing that. And then also we're basically living in my wife and I were living in like a kind of double wide size trailer size apartment, like basically Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment from the Jeffrey Dahmer series that was on. That's where we've been living during this whole movie, and we haven't lived in our house. That's the only thing I would change. Everything else, the treachery of working, is absolutely fine with me, because I like solving a problem, and that to me, and again, making a movie and making all this stuff is the ultimate brain puzzle, and I can't be more excited than having that challenge thrown at me. So the therapy is the art, the therapy is the work, and it's also the treachery, it's also the misery, and we're still not in our house yet. But once we're in it, I'm gonna forget the misery, you know.
mhm.
So I just know that that's. But while you're in the misery, you're still just miserable. The
Yeah.
other thing is, here's something that I'm
Alicia?
stuck in a room making a movie in this kind of like world, a work environment, is means just not a lot of contact with the people that you're working with. We're all screen sharing. It's all Zooms. Um, that's crazy. Being in small places is crazy. But I've had this wanderlust where I just keep talking about, my God, I just want to drive around America. I just want to drive around America. And then the tourists come and I'm like, oh, I get to drive around America. Oh, I get to play guitar. Oh, I get to drive around America and play guitar. Oh, so that to me is like, that's going to be fun. And I like the crew we're working with. Everyone there, I've worked with them before. They're all really cool. We have really good conversations on the bus. We have people that are like musical perfectionists that I'm lucky to be around, people way better than me at what they do, and they do this for a living. So I'm looking forward to it. There are going to be a million problems along the way, but we'll solve them all. I got a smart team,
Yeah.
and our ticket sales are nice. It's really nice to know that people are excited about this project. That feels very nice. It's
Yeah.
really nice. Um, and again, this project is no longer mine. It's it's the people that like this project. It's their
Yeah.
project. And the second I finish and deliver this last thing, I'm also like, that's it. It's yours now. It's no longer mine. I can tell you how I did it. I can tell how I arrived at all these conclusions, but it's not for me anymore. It's for you. And I don't, and There's not been an occasion where I've gone back and really rewatched anything I've done before,
Oh,
because my relationship with it is on when I'm done. Like from home movies to Metalocalypse, unless I'm doing deep research, and still I wince when I look at it. So, but that's my relationship with it, because my relationship is different than the audience's.
wow.
Seeing
Yeah, of
mistakes, but
course.
I think it's important to feel that way. I think if I rest on my laurels, or I think, hey, I really did a great job, I never think I do. I always think, I think I got pretty close to where I wanted to be.
Yeah, well, I think with artists, that's probably the closest that you ever can get because I don't think you ever are going to be 100% satisfied. You can go through and
You know,
tweak it a
I've
million
listened.
times.
My heroes from writing to directing feel the same way, and
Mhm.
I know I'm not alone. It's funny. I was watching all the masterclass stuff while I was doing this, just to hear what Danny Elfman had to say about film composing, what Hans Zimmer had to say about what David Mamet had to say about writing and directing, what Ron Howard had to say about directing, and all this stuff was really helpful. And it also, Ron Howard said something really funny in his master class, where he says, he works with a writer for a long time that he's been helping write, and he's sitting there and he's watching what the actors are doing, and he's going, "Who wrote this? What is this?" And then he's in the edit bay, and he's looking at the footage, and he goes, "Who directed this? Oh my God!" And what you're asking for in a movie or animated movie or live action movie or all these pieces of a puzzle, and you get them all together and nothing fits, and so you're like shimming the edges and getting a hot glue gun and sticking stuff together, and that's how it is, and you put this gloss over it and you're like, ta-da. And that's everything from Star Wars to this, like that ILM documentary that came out on Disney Plus. I don't know if you saw it, but it was really influential, and you'll see like the ink tanks and all that stuff that we were talking about, which, but that was something that the whole team was kind of watching at the same time, and just realizing that like nothing's perfect. We won't get anywhere unless we challenge ourselves. And how do we beat the clock? What do we do? So I don't know. It's all therapy. It's the whole thing's about therapy, and this whole thing is about an artist having to create under duress. That's what the story is. Nathan Explosion, who has like some post-traumatic stress from the last incarnation, is in a romantic and professional flat spin when he is given a challenge to write this song that may or may not save the world. So it's creativity under duress. So it's something I can always like throw something like that in there and go, well, I can write that. I know what that is. I know what that feels like. I can exaggerate it. I can make it more bombastic, but I know what the central feeling is, so I can write that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Um, I'm so excited to watch it. I really wish I could have already watched it. I was so bummed.
Yeah.
I got the email yesterday and she was like, I did everything I could. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, hey, that's how it worked out and that's okay.
I think they'll probably sort it out. They'll sort it out soon enough. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
what are you gonna
Well, I can just order it and watch it when it comes out, but I wanted to watch
do?
it before I had talked to you, which, I don't know, it probably worked out the way it was supposed to because I probably would have been like throwing out spoilers, accidentally trying to figure out how to not, but also talk about it. So it probably worked out the way it was supposed to.
Um, you know, yeah, I mean, I've talked to people who have watched it, and I've talked to people who haven't watched it, and the conversations are somewhat similar, because what ends up kind of happening is I'm telling the story of how this group is creative together, or how I got into this idea, or what it was like then, what it's like now. So a lot of the subject matter is pretty similar. And then I would get some questions where like not too terribly specific, and I don't want to talk or spoil anything either. So I usually kind of stay in the first or second act, and I don't really talk about the second half of the second act or the third act, because I think that's major spoiler territory anyway. So I don't really even bring it up, because, or if I do, I go back to Maria and I go, hey, make sure that airs after the thing releases, because I talk too much.
I said too many things. I said
Yeah,
too much. So what
I
are
said
so
too much.
you had mentioned you like horror movies. And horror movie
Yeah.
season is coming upon us. So what are some of your favorites? You mentioned Poltergeist is one of your favorites.
By the way, I have a 12 o'clock, so I may have to jump
Yes.
off.
No. Yep. Just give me
Yeah,
one and then I'll let you go.
but uh, I love anything John Carpenter does. I love Poltergeist. I love Toby Hooper. I love Life Force. I love Chainsaw Massacre. I love The Exorcist. I love all the classics, but I also love all the kind of New York street trashy kind of like, do it yourself stuff from like, Frankenhooker to, all that stuff. I love Lloyd Kaufman, Toxic Avenger. I love all that stuff. I love high, I love low, I love everything in between. I love it. I love people I even like, all the modern stuff. I love what Ari Aster's doing as in his comedies and in, Hereditary and all that stuff. I like what Panos Cosmatos is doing with Mandy and all that stuff. I can't wait to see what he does next. I love what else? What else? Oh, I loved Barbarian that came out.
That
Uh
was weird.
yeah, that one. Yeah, I was into it. And that's also another comedy guy. Zach Kreger, who is like in a sketch comedy group, and we've crossed paths before and all that stuff. But yeah, I love all that stuff. I that's kind of my next goal, is to do a live action kind of horror kind of a thing that also has a music driven element.
Oh, that's
So
awesome. I look forward to that. Thank you so much for
yeah,
taking the time with me, Brendon. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
absolutely.
Bye.
You too. Thanks very much. Good talking to you.